When David Chen won $20 million, he suddenly had more friends than he knew what to do with. Parties, vacations, expensive dinners. Everyone wanted to be around the lottery winner who was living the dream. But when the money disappeared as quickly as it had come, so did all those friends. What they didn't know was that David had been quietly watching, learning, and discovering who truly cared about him versus who cared about his wallet. When Ellen surprised him with a reunion of his wealthy-era friends, David would get the chance to reveal not just his financial truth, but the truth about their friendship. The studio was warm with curiosity as Ellen finished her opening dance to "Money Can't Buy Me Love" by the Beatles, the song choice seeming almost intentional given what was about to unfold. The audience was still chuckling from Ellen's monologue about the strange things people do when they suddenly come into money, and the bright California afternoon light streaming through the windows promised that this would be one of those episodes that challenged assumptions about wealth and happiness. David Chen sat in the green room, adjusting his simple navy polo shirt, the kind he wore to his job at Henderson's grocery store where he had been working for the past 3 years. At 37, David had the kind of genuine contentment that came from hard-earned wisdom, laugh lines around dark eyes that had seen both the best and worst of human nature, graying hair that he kept neat, despite his modest means, and the calm demeanor of someone who had learned the difference between having money and having value. David had never imagined he would be sitting backstage at the Ellen DeGeneres show. 6 weeks earlier, his current boss, Mr. Henderson, had secretly submitted David's story to the show's Life Lessons segment after learning about his employee's extraordinary journey from lottery millionaire to grocery store clerk. David had been hesitant to share his story publicly, preferring the quiet anonymity of his current life to the spotlight that had once burned so brightly. What David didn't know was that his story had intrigued the show's producers so much that they had tracked down several people from his wealthy period, friends who still believed he was living the high life and had no idea that the man who once funded their lavish lifestyle was now bagging their groceries. "David Chen, you're ready in 5 minutes," a production assistant announced. David took a deep breath, touched the simple watch his father had given him, the only expensive item he still owned from his lottery days, and followed the assistant toward the stage. As he walked through the corridors lined with photos of Ellen's most inspiring guests, he thought about the man he used to be and marveled at how losing everything had helped him find himself. Ellen's introduction was warm and intriguing. "My next guest has a story that will make you rethink everything you believe about winning and losing. 5 years ago, he won $20 million in the lottery. Today, he works at a grocery store and says he's never been happier. Please welcome David Chen." The audience applauded as David walked onto the stage, his humble confidence evident in every step. Ellen greeted him with her signature hug and immediately sensed the unusual combination of simplicity and wisdom radiating from this man. "David, thank you for being here," Ellen said as they settled onto the familiar white couch. "Let's start with the obvious question. You won $20 million in the lottery 5 years ago. How did that feel?" David's smile was gentle but complicated. "Ellen, it felt like a dream come true. I was 32, working as an accountant, struggling to pay student loans and living paycheck to paycheck. Suddenly, I had more money than I had ever imagined possible." Ellen leaned forward with interest. "What was the first thing you did with the money?" "I quit my job, paid off all my debts, bought my parents a house, and then—" "I went a little crazy," David admitted with a laugh. "Mansion in the hills, 3 luxury cars, expensive clothes, fine dining every night. I thought I was living the American dream." Ellen could sense there was much more to this story. "It sounds like you were enjoying yourself. What changed?" David's expression grew more thoughtful. "Well, the money changed me, but it also changed everyone around me. Suddenly I had friends I didn't remember making, people who wanted to hang out all the time, go on expensive trips, eat at fancy restaurants, all on my dime, of course. The studio had grown noticeably quieter as the audience sensed David was leading up to something significant. "Did you enjoy having all those new friends?" Ellen asked gently. "At first I thought I did," David said. "It felt good to be popular, to be the guy everyone wanted to be around, but slowly I started noticing things. People only called when they wanted something. Plans always involved me paying. When I suggested something free, like a hike or a movie night at home, suddenly everyone was busy." Ellen's heart was already connecting with David's story. "That must have been difficult to realize." "It was eye-opening," David confirmed. "But the real wake-up call came when I started losing the money." Ellen was surprised. "You lost $20 million? How?" David's laugh held both irony and hard-earned wisdom. "Bad investments, expensive lifestyle, and a lot of people who were very good at helping me spend money. I trusted the wrong financial advisors, invested in businesses that existed only on paper, and basically learned that it's possible to spend $20 million faster than you might think." The audience was completely captivated by David's honesty about his financial downfall. "How long did it take to lose all of it?" Ellen asked. "About 2 years," David said simply. "And you know what's interesting? As the money disappeared, so did all those friends. When I couldn't afford to pick up the check anymore, when I couldn't fund their lifestyles, they just vanished." Ellen was amazed by David's matter-of-fact tone. "How did that feel?" "Honestly, liberating," David said, surprising Ellen. "I realized I had been paying for companionship without even knowing it. When the money was gone, I finally found out who I really was underneath all that wealth." Ellen leaned forward, fascinated. "And who were you?" "Someone much simpler and much happier than the millionaire I had been," David replied. "I got a job at Henderson's grocery store, moved into a studio apartment, and started building a life based on who I am, rather than what I can afford." Ellen shook her head in wonder. "David, most people would be devastated to lose $20 million. You seem almost grateful." "I am grateful," David said firmly. "That money taught me the most valuable lesson of my life, the difference between being rich and being wealthy. Rich is about money. Wealthy is about relationships, purpose, contentment. I'm wealthier now than I ever was as a millionaire." Ellen looked toward her producers, knowing she had a surprise that would test David's newfound philosophy. "David," Ellen said carefully, "what if I told you that some of your friends from your wealthy days wanted to see you again?" David's expression grew curious. "What do you mean?" "What if I told you that we contacted some of the people you used to spend time with during your lottery winner days, and they're here today?" David's face showed a flicker of old anxiety. "They're here? Do they know about my situation?" Ellen shook her head. "They think you're still living the high life. They have no idea you lost the money." David was quiet for a moment, clearly processing the implications. "This should be interesting." Ellen stood up and looked toward the stage entrance. "Would you like to see some old friends?" 3 people walked onto the stage. Jessica Martinez, an impeccably dressed woman in her 30s, Brandon Torres, a man in expensive designer clothes, and Monica Stewart, who looked like she had just stepped out of a magazine. All 3 were beaming with the kind of enthusiasm reserved for reuniting with someone they expected to benefit from. David stood up slowly, his humble grocery store uniform a stark contrast to their obvious wealth and style. "David!" Jessica exclaimed, rushing to hug him. "Oh my God, you look different. Is this like a casual phase you're going through?" Brandon clapped David on the back. "Dude, we've missed you. Your parties were legendary. When are you throwing another one?" Monica looked around the studio with excitement. "This is so cool that you're on Ellen. Are you announcing some new business venture? Another big investment?" David looked at his former friends, then at Ellen, then back at them. "Actually, I have something to tell you all." Ellen watched carefully, ready to intervene if needed. "David, would you like to share your news?" David took a deep breath and faced his former friends. Jessica, Brandon, Monica. I lost all the lottery money 2 years ago. I work at a grocery store now and live in a studio apartment. I'm not rich anymore." The silence that followed was deafening. Jessica's smile faltered. Brandon looked confused, and Monica actually took a step back. "What do you mean you lost it?" Brandon asked, his friendly demeanor already cooling. "Bad investments, expensive lifestyle, trusting the wrong people," David explained. "It's gone, all of it." Jessica was processing this information with visible discomfort. "So you're poor now?" "I'm not poor," David corrected gently. "I have enough. I have a job, a place to live, and I'm happier than I was when I had millions." Monica was looking around as if she wanted to escape. But what about all the plans we made? The trips we talked about? That investment opportunity I mentioned?" David smiled with sad understanding. "Monica, you haven't called me in 3 years. None of you have. You only reached out when Ellen's show contacted you." Ellen could see the awkwardness and decided to address it directly. "Jessica, Brandon, Monica, how are you feeling about this news?" Jessica struggled to maintain her composure. I'm happy that David is happy. But this is definitely not what I expected." Brandon was more direct. "Honestly, David, I'm disappointed. We had a good thing going. You were generous, fun to be around when you could afford to show us a good time." David nodded with understanding rather than anger. "I know, and that taught me something important about friendship." Ellen was fascinated by this real-time demonstration of fair-weather friendship. "David, what did it teach you?" "It taught me the difference between people who like you and people who like what you can do for them," David said simply. "These three are good people, but they were friends with my wallet, not with me." Monica finally found her voice. "That's not fair, David. We genuinely enjoyed spending time with you." "When I was paying for everything," David replied without malice. "When's the last time any of you suggested something free? When's the last time you asked how I was doing rather than what we were doing next?" The trio exchanged uncomfortable glances, clearly realizing David was right. Ellen had been watching this interaction with growing respect for David's grace under pressure. "David, you're handling this with incredible maturity." "I've had 3 years to process it," David said. "I'm not angry at them. They gave me a valuable education about human nature." Ellen had one more surprise that would demonstrate the contrast between David's old life and new life. "David, there's someone else here who wants to meet you," Ellen announced. An older man in a simple work shirt walked onto the stage. David's face lit up with genuine joy. "Mr. Henderson," David exclaimed, giving his boss a warm hug. Ellen addressed the audience. "This is Mr. Henderson, David's boss, at the grocery store where he's worked for 3 years." Mr. Henderson looked at the three former friends, then at David. "David is the best employee I've ever had. Reliable, honest, kind to customers and co-workers. He never asks for special treatment, never complains, and he's the first person to help when someone needs it." Jessica, Brandon, and Monica were seeing a completely different side of David, one where he was valued for his character rather than his bank account. Ellen turned to David's former friends. "How does it feel to see David in this context?" Brandon was the first to speak honestly. "It's humbling. I realize we never really knew David at all. We knew rich David, but not real David." Jessica nodded reluctantly. "You seem genuinely happy, which is confusing because you have so much less than you used to." "I have so much more than I used to," David corrected. "I have real relationships, meaningful work, and peace of mind. I didn't have any of those things when I was rich." Ellen reached into her desk and pulled out an envelope. "David, while preparing for this show, we learned something interesting. Mr. Henderson has been so impressed with your work that he's been planning to offer you a management position." Mr. Henderson smiled. "David, I wanted to offer you the assistant manager position. It comes with a raise and benefits. You've earned it." David was genuinely surprised and touched. "Mr. Henderson, I don't know what to say." "But there's more," Ellen continued. We also discovered that you've been volunteering at a financial literacy nonprofit, helping people avoid the mistakes you made. David looked embarrassed. It's just a few hours a week. I want to help people understand money better than I did. Ellen wasn't finished. David, I want to support your financial literacy work. I'm providing funding for you to expand the program and maybe even write a book about your experience. The audience erupted in applause as David covered his face with his hands, overwhelmed by the unexpected opportunities. Ellen, this is incredible, but I have to ask, why me? Why is my story worth sharing? Ellen's expression grew thoughtful. David, in a world that's obsessed with getting rich, you've proven that being rich isn't the same as being successful. You've shown that losing everything can sometimes mean finding yourself. David looked at his former friends one more time. I want you all to know that I don't regret our time together. You taught me important lessons about friendship and authenticity. I hope you find what you're really looking for. Jessica seemed genuinely moved. David, I think you found something we're all still searching for. 6 months later, Ellen attended the launch of David's book, The $20 Million Lesson, What Losing Everything Taught Me About Winning. The event was held at Henderson's grocery store, and the room was filled with an interesting mix of people, his co-workers, his financial literacy students, his new girlfriend Sarah, a teacher he had met at the Literacy Center, and surprisingly, Jessica, who had reached out to rebuild a friendship based on who David was rather than what he owned. Any regrets about losing the lottery money? Ellen asked as they signed books together. David smiled, looking at Sarah helping customers find his book. None. That $20 million was the most expensive education I've ever received, but it was worth every penny. It taught me that the real lottery isn't winning money. It's learning who you are when everything else is stripped away. Because sometimes the biggest loss leads to the greatest gain. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find out what actually matters. And sometimes the friends who disappear when your money runs out are doing you the biggest favor of all, showing you who was real and who was just expensive.